What's going on, Freedom Fam? We're back again with another video. About to react to this video by the Roommates podcast. We brought Candace Owens onto the show. This is a lady that's like super controversial, but there are some stuff that I agree with pertaining to a few things that she says. We won't get into that in particular, but this is interesting because I haven't really seen her speak much on women of today, and she might have spoken on it. I don't know. Maybe I missed it. I'm not really searching Candace Owens. I don't follow her or anything like that. I've only heard things here and there about some of her political views and like social issues, her views on social issues. So it's gonna be interesting to see how she uh, lays out these points. It says she's talking about the biggest problem with women today. So let's jump into this.
You know what I always say?
Go ahead.
Experiment with both and tell me what makes you feel better. And that is the truth when it comes to young women, because I dedicated my first episode to young women and really talking to them about these are the options that are being presented to you. Less. Take off more clothes, do the most to get attention, right? If you think that that's freedom, the idea that you have to wear less and the idea that you have to get naked to be heard, you really think that's a form of freedom? Because that's not. That's slavery. That's bondage.
That's an interesting way to explain that, because what she's basically saying is, you've been this sex positive culture that's out there. It's a form of freedom per se. And what she's really laying out is she's saying there's two options. You could either go with that, be free, quote unquote, or you can try the other approach. She's saying that although it's paying out to be freedom, it's actually a form of slavery. Now I'm looking to see how she kind of like breaks that down a little bit. But what I find interesting about this culture now of like wearing less and like just being really positive with your body in a way where you're willing to share it with anyone, I think what is lost is the fact that most people want to be in relationships. So you have to ask, well, what is the opposite sex? Assuming that, that is your sexual orientation. What does the opposite sex want? If most men would like their women to cover up and not have shown the world everything that, they should be seeing in private, then, how does that factor into your way of life? Are you just going to completely ignore that? Are you going to say that men should just get used to it and, move on? Or like what is actually being said there? And I kind of have the answer to that. I've spoken to a few people who are in that, community where they're just like, it don't matter what a man says, blah, 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 blah. But it's interesting to see how she's going to break down.
Have to take off my clothes to be heard in society. And these women will realize that when you follow these people that are, self-imposed feminists, I'm a feminist, I do this, I'm a feminist, you hear that word over and over and over again, you'll find that the majority of them are miserable. Look at their lives and ask yourself a question. Do you think they are happy? Do you feel good when you do what they do? Right? When you're constantly looking for a dopamine hit from social media because you took your clothes off and you want somebody in your comments, a thirst trap with your out, right? And you want someone in your comments going, oh, you slay bae, you slayed the day bae, hashtag Tuesdays, am I right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, see, that's a great point. That's kind of where I was going with it. So you're looking for that validation, and it becomes like she said, it's a dopamine hit when you see that you're getting that attention, and usually it's from people who you don't even know. At least that's what the goal is. The goal is to get some form of, I wouldn't say clout per se, but like, you want to have people in your comments who are just like, oh yeah, you look great and blah, 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 blah. There's nothing wrong with compliments, but it goes as far as to, goes well past compliments. And, I think what she's bringing out is that, when you're chasing that, is that really making you happy? What's making you happy about it? That's an interesting question to ask yourself if you're in that way of thinking right now, or you want to be, or whatever it is. Because I mean, you talk to a lot of women. A lot of women, they might say that they're, positive and all that with their body and all that, but they don't really go as far to show what they got on social media or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? They just are with the crowd and they say, you go ahead, sis. And those are also the same ones who might say something to the effect of, I'm depressed, or I feel like I'm depressed because, I'm looking at all these pictures on social media of women who look perfect, quote unquote perfect. You can't say the two in the same breath. It just doesn't work that way, So she is definitely laying it out in an
And
interesting
you
way.
do this stuff for attention, and you're devaluing yourself, and at the end of the day you don't actually feel good, and it's not going to bring you happiness, right? So yeah, you can get guys sliding in your DM, you can get guys telling you look good, you can get guys that want to sleep with you. How many of these people actually get guys that want to stay with you, right? That are not in somebody else's DM. The same way that you found him is the same way he's going to find somebody else, because we are increasingly becoming a part of a society that's ADHD. You want to know why our grandparents stayed together? Because they weren't looking at cheeks all day on Instagram and refreshing it and going, oh, well, that girl looks younger, that girl looks better, that girl's face tuned, and I think that is what these young women that they're following are telling them. You've got 13-year-olds getting lip injections, right? Because they want to look like Kylie Jenner. Again, not a shot to Kylie Jenner, but what society have we created that ever made Kylie Jenner feel like she had to go out and buy those lips, that she had to contour her entire face and change her entire body? She was already a beautiful little girl. So the society is...
She literally just said what I said. That's the culture that's being created. Kylie Jenner, what she's saying is Kylie Jenner was already beautiful the way she was, but she went out and did whatever she did to her body, and that now others are just like, okay, well, I gotta follow on, I gotta keep up with Kylie Jenner. And that's one way to think of things, but like, are you ever going to be fulfilled? Are you really loving your body if you have to go out and do all types of stuff? Are you really loving your body if you have to get fulfillment from someone other than yourself? It just doesn't really make much sense. Let's move on.
It's ill. It's not normal, right? Don't let these people convince you that that's normal. That's cancer, and that cancer will become contagious to you if you accept that. You don't follow better role models.
It seems to me a lot of women, when they hear conservative values, the trigger to them, and I could be wrong, the trigger to them, it seems as, bondage, go back in the kitchen, shut up and just, just be a slave to your husband. Why do you feel like there's so much of when they're hearing about some of the things that you say, like what makes you happy is making your husband a sandwich? Some people like that sounds crazy, right? So why do you think there's such a disgust, such a rejection of that kind of idea of that kind of woman in regards to modern society?
Because we're being brainwashed via the education system.
Okay.
You learn feminism in school, right? You learn feminism. I had to actively learn it.
And for clarification, how do you define feminism?
I can tell you how they define it and what it actually is, right?
Go
So
ahead.
feminism in school, when you learn it, is you're just fighting against the patriarchy, and you're supposed to see the patriarchy everywhere. It's the same way that critical race theory and race is being taught. The idea is they're not actually teaching you anything but how to hate white people when you're learning about race in school. And when you are learning about feminism, they're not actually teaching you anything other than how to hate men and to see the patriarchy and men putting you down everywhere, right? So when you have that form of psychological conditioning taking place in the school system, you're producing women that see the patriarchy everywhere. It becomes like a paranoia, right? Oh my God, I've asked me to make a sandwich. Oh my God, can I make a sandwich? And then that's it, I'm trapped. And they're actually not realizing that there actually was an incentive behind you even being taught that. You've never actually lived the life of making a husband a sandwich, and they think that's going to send you back and suddenly you're going to lose your voting rights and you're not going to be able to go get work. There was a time when there was a need for feminism, first wave feminism, right? But first wave feminists would want nothing to do with third wave feminists, which is where we're at today, right? Women that think that actually first wave feminists, you could argue, envied men. right? They wanted to be able to go to work. They wanted to have that option to be something outside of the home, right? Now we have that option, and we're being told the exact opposite, which is that if you everything in the home is bad, and that's what you call throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There are some really amazing things. I think the best things that come from being at home. Sometimes I think we got the bad end of the deal, right? I'm like, why? Wait, we got to stay at home and do nothing and spend our husband's money, and somebody complains.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to lay it out. There's definitely layers to what feminism is, and like I think there's like a spectrum of like, you know, different ideologies really. And so it's really difficult to parse, and I think that's why Hafiz from the Roommates podcast, that's why he asked that question. You know, how do you define it? Because it's been defined different ways. If you have that conversation with women who claim to be feminists, you know, when you start really asking them certain questions, they start to realize that they don't necessarily fit into all categories of at least extreme feminism, which many claim to be. When they say they're feminists, usually they're saying they're aligned with the extremity of it. So that is an interesting point. I think that there are definitely good aspects to feminism, if it's taken the correct way and it's used within limits. For example, women having the right to vote, I don't have any problem with that personally. You know, I don't think that's an issue. You know, being able to have land, that's not necessarily an issue to me. I don't think anybody brings that up as an issue. So clearly that message has turned from that. It's turned into what she calls third wave, which has to do with if you see anything that's, you know, even reminisces of the traditional way of the past in terms of relationships, run away. And I think that's just kind of, that's chaotic, because that stems all the way into, even if you see a woman who's comfortable being a stay-at-home mom, for example, that woman is ridiculed. That woman is seen as like, you know, you're in a terrible position. You're in a toxic situation, is what they'll say, just based on the fact that she's at home. And I think that's a terrible way to look at it. But you know, that is the world that we're in right now when it comes to that area in particular. So, you know, it is an interesting way to lay it out. One other thing before we move on, I think the way that she is really like laying things out, she's doing so in a very logical way. I'm still looking to see what she's saying the biggest problem is. I'm not sure if she's saying that it's the women like moving away from the patriarchal structure itself. It sounds like that's what she's saying, but I'm trying to see her actual details regarding that. How has that affected women in particular? Because she has listed like there's a hypersexuality. She's listed that feminism has played a role, but you know, what are the results of that?
Yeah.
That's a joke, guys.
That's a joke. But no, that and to me, I think that's the part where, you know, I've unfortunately seen that happen so much in society, that there's such a mischaracterization to me of what people think as stay-at-home mothers and traditional women. There's such a mischaracterization, like these women were prisoners,
right?
You know,
yeah,
and
right.
So whereas, like you said, I think first wave feminism wanted women to have a choice, but then third wave, the choice is gone. You must choose what we want for
exactly
you, right?
what we want is you.
That's where I was going. So there was once a choice. The fight was for women to have a choice. Now, the fight is not about women having a choice. The fight is for whatever is wanted by the majority. That's kind of where I was going with it. He said it much better than I did.
to be top 40 Forbes company, a corporation. If you don't have that, then you somehow failed. And I'm like, that is so backwards and so wrong. And it also goes against biology. It goes against biology. There's a reason, biological underpinning to everything that we have in this society. People keep trying to outthink biology. It doesn't work that way, right? There's a reason, women can carry children and men can't. So that instantly allows man to have different goals in terms of the workforce than women, because that means we have to make a decision. Do we have children or continue working in our career, or try to juggle both? Men don't have that same pressure, and it's not their fault. They didn't design this. Men weren't like, well, I have an idea, let's not be able to carry children, only let women be able to do that. And so there's the biological reality of that, and increasingly you see women that go for it in terms of their career because they have the societal pressure, and then it's too late. And then they realize, wow, this job is not making me happy. But my gosh, can I just tell you as a new mom what you feel like when your son smiles at you? Like, when your baby looks up at you, there's no greater feeling of accomplishment. Like there is none. I have accomplished a lot in my life in terms of my career. And I can tell you there is nothing that satisfies me more than just my baby smiling at me. And
I get where she's going now. So she's saying that what fulfills women is not what women are chasing. That's a great way to lay that out. Yeah, I think her point on women chasing career in particular, and how for her, that wasn't fulfilling to her, and it wasn't anywhere close to the fulfillment that she got when I'm assuming she had a child. But she's saying holding a baby or whatever it is, and that's just because that's her nature, is pretty much what she's saying. And I think that's a clean way of putting it. Like it's pretty practical. There's no debating that women have a motherly instinct. So that is a good point. And she brings up how that happiness came from that moment when she can hold a baby in her hands. That's profound. Like you can't really, like I said, you can't argue with that, because happiness, it's clear that, I mean, all you got to do is if you talk to certain groups of women, particularly over 30, maybe accomplished in their career, they get into a mode where they're saying, okay, well, I got to make sure I'm married at some point. Most, of course, there are some most that I've come across, at least. There are many that don't, but they're not looking to get married at all, and that's fine. But those who do, they find that it's difficult to do that at that age, because they're kind of just restarting. They focused on career and all that, and kind of put everything else to the side regarding relationships. They don't even know how to be in a relationship at times because they were so focused on career. So that fulfillment that they wanted is no longer, it's more difficult, is what I'll say.
We're taking that away from women because we're telling them that's the wrong aspirations to have in life.
Another thing that I've noticed going on in society is that there is a lot of cynicism towards men as well. And you've talked about it, as well on your show and on different platforms. And I've noticed that a lot of women, similar to like what the media does, it projects such a negative, cynical view of men in society, of men are going to take advantage of you, they're going to beat you, they're going to, get you pregnant and leave you. There's such a negative view of men. So for women who may have a negative view of men because of maybe personal experience, whether their father may have not been there or because of whatever society painted to them, how would you encourage them? How would you motivate them to not be as cynical and to be more optimistic when it comes to men?
I think it's a self-perpetuating problem, meaning that there are crappy men in the world, right? But men are crappy because we've created a system where manhood has become obsolete. You keep increasingly telling men more and more they can't matter. When I say, who are they being told that by? They're, like I said, there's more sinister implications here of why we're making manhood obsolete. When we're saying masculinity is wrong, this is backwards. You don't need a man. You can just have a baby without a man. You're starting to see that sort of programming happening with young women. When you're telling women to act like men, you should aspire to the things that men naturally might aspire to. When you remove.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna leave it there, and I'm gonna put the link to the video there, just if you want to watch it. Shout out to the Roommates podcast, very great podcast. I've been watching them for about probably about a year and a half now. Um, yeah, it does feel like, many women are trying to squeeze men out of society as best as possible. Um, she listed a few things like, just being able to do what a man can do, taking the roles that a man has had, that fulfills the man, and also, uh, she also brought up just, you know, we don't even need men to create a baby anymore. We just hit the sperm bank or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And that's, I mean, that's it's kind of crazy to me, but like I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with her, disagree with her, why or why not? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button. It's gonna help us grow the channel. Of course, subscribe as well, and we're gonna see you in the next video.